Disclaimer, I don't know if it is the 30 plus days that I've worked without a day off or the 12 to 15 hour days that I've currently been working, but this video could be better. It's a little rocky in places, I'm not gonna lie. I could have a better vocabulary. But I think what I want you to know with all of this is that there's the little scrolling text that's coming in. Make sure you're looking at that because I'll set you straight there if I misspoke in any way. So just make sure that you're looking at that and paying attention. Also, this is one of those videos that you probably do want to pop your popcorn and just sit back and watch. You do not want to work while you're watching it because it's not going to go in the order that you need it to, and it's not all going to apply to you. So go ahead. It's a little lengthy, but there's so much information in this video. So take notes, do what you need to do, but go ahead and watch it first and then actually get started with working with it. Again, apologize for the quality, but you know what? You'll get over it and I'll do better next time. Enjoy! This presentation is all about adding additions. When you add additions, there are a few things that are really important that you understand, so I want you to write this down. First of all, if you are connecting two leather hard pieces of clay, you have to use a wet coil in between. Two leather hard pieces of clay, wet coil. If you are adding a wet piece of clay to something that is leather hard, you'd need to score the leather hard area. So if you're adding a wet piece of coil or a wet piece of clay to something that is leather hard, you are going to score the leather hard area. If you are connecting wet clay to wet clay, you don't really need to do anything because it's wet. You can just smush and smear it together. But those things are really important, especially the leather hard to leather hard. If you do not put something in between, you're going to put wet clay and you're going to slip and score. If you do not put something in between, it is not going to stick. It's going to look like it. It's going to look like it's sticking all day long until it becomes bone dry and things start to fall off, or it goes in through the bisque kiln and it comes out and you no longer have anything attached to each other. So make sure that you are following those, and that is going to go for everything that you do in this class. The supplies you may or may not need to make and attach your additions are the following: a paddle, fettling knife, wooden modeling tool, needle tool, ribbon tool, small wire tool. And what is important here is that it has the pointed handle. We're not really going to be using the wire side at this point, but you are going to be using this handle. If you don't have this tool for whatever reason, but you do have another type of tool that is small, you may want to go ahead and grab that. The modeling tool gets a little bit too big for what we're going to do. Scoring tool, clay shredder, metal rib, serrated rib, that's the one with teeth, and your slip and a brush. A piece of small plastic, a hand towel. There are other things you may need. We will talk about those as we go through the presentation, but this should do everything that you need to do to get the party started. You may not use all of what I'm about to talk about for one project, but chances are throughout your time working with clay, you will need to know about everything that I am talking about. So pay attention, even if it doesn't apply to you, because it will at some point. So here I've started out with a pinched form that I had said in another video I was going to show you how to put points on. So this was beat into as close as a shape as I could get trying to make a pyramid. So as far as trying to make a pyramid, you can see that I still have all these rounded parts. Well, I did already take one side and I made it look like I want it to make it look. So I've put those sharp edges on. So the first thing that you're going to do as far as attaching anything or making additions for anything is making your body of the clay what you want it to be before you go any further, because that's going to dictate, like if you've got arms or legs, you're putting a guitar neck on something, the shape of your body is going to dictate what those attachments are going to look like. So we definitely want to deal with this first. So let me show you how to make points on something. The first thing that you're going to do is slip and score. This is very leather hard. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in here, and anywhere that I'm going to be attaching, I'm going to go ahead and slip and score it. Remember that when you're slipping and scoring, you want to get in there really deep. And really, the more leather hard your work gets, the more you've got to dig into that clay body. Now to make points, I'm going to simply just make a coil, and it's going to look ugly for a minute like everything does in class. And I'm just going to smash that on here. I know that I'm going to need more of a ball form down there at the bottom. So I'll just kind of press a ball form in there like that. One thing I do like to do, because I know I'm going to be pulling this out, you can come in and score where you think you're going to be pulling. It's always good to get in that habit. I know that things are looking ugly right now, but remember, everything is fixable, and we're going to clean things up when we are actually finished doing this. So I'm first pressing down because I want to make sure that my coil's in place, and then I'm going to start pulling out toward my clay body and start meshing that in with my clay body. And I can start shaping it. At this time, I do like to come in with my serrated rib and just start forming it a little bit better, because again, remember that this serrated rib helps to compress. And it's also going to take away any of those weird bumps that I had. Okay. Now at this point, I would leave it for a minute. When I say a minute, I mean a little while. I want to leave it for a while because I actually do want it to get firmed up before I do this next step. But due to the purpose of a demo, I'm going to go ahead and do the next step. This is much better if you let it firm up. But now I can take the smooth metal rib and I can start taking those teeth marks out. And this is when I'm really going to start to see my point. Again, if this was a little bit firmer, I'd actually have more control over what I'm doing, believe it or not. And then once it's really firm, if there's still some weird stuff going on that you don't like, that clay shredder will be able to get whatever you need done. So that made a really nice angle there, or curve there, and I can come in here and I can clay shred. I never want to clay shred when the clay is too wet. It just doesn't work out very well. So again, all this stuff would be done when things are a little bit firmer. Okay. So now I have a shape that I like a lot better than what I had initially made. And I could do the same thing with the top. Now, if I wanted this to come into a pyramid that goes way up here, I'm actually going to have to make the form and then hollow it out. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm going to show you that technique in a little bit, but I just want you to know if you're putting that much clay on something, you can form it, but then you've got to wait till it leather hards and then carve it out. Remember, we're trying to stay at 1/4 of an inch in this class. With everything that we do, we're trying to stay at 1/4 of an inch. Okay, now just so you have some idea of my master plan here with this thing, this is actually the belly, and there'll be a head on here, and then there'll be a tail coming out here, and there'll be some legs, and there'll be a few arms. I just want you to kind of see where I'm going with this. And I know as I'm looking at this, that right here, I don't really want it to be concave. I actually want to put a little pot belly on it. Because why not? So I can do that by making a pinched pot and get ready to do something like this. Now obviously that's just a little bit too big. So I am going to come in and I am going to cut this pinch pot down. So remember, when you are cutting anything down like this, you want to insert the knife and you do not want to go back and forth. You're going to go ahead and just gently slice through the form. And then if things are a little bit wonky, you can always take that serrated rib and get things to where, the clay shredder, and get things to where you want them to go. So now, I gotta find my front first, I can go ahead and I can put this little pot belly on. And won't that be so cute? It kind of looks weird now, but when I'm done with it, it will be pretty nice. So right now, this shape is a little bit too puffy. I am gonna come in and I'm just gonna stretch that out a little bit so it's not so pop out. And now I know when I actually do go to adhere this, I'll be able to pull everything in and it'll just give it that nice little rounded form there that you see. What becomes really important right now is that you know where this is going to set. Because right now we have trapped air between this form and this form. And when we have trapped air, things blow up. So we don't want that trapped air. We also want to alleviate as much clay as we possibly can because that's going to help with our weight at the end. So I'm going to come in here and with my needle tool, I'm going to go around and I'm going to go around that. And now I know that that's where it's going to sit and what I need to actually cut off. So I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to come in 1/4 of an inch because that is essentially about how thick this is. I'm going to come in 1/4 of an inch and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take all that clay out. We don't need it. It just adds weight. We also, the more airflow that we can get through our sculpture, the better it's going to be. So we're going to get rid of weight. And we're going to add some nice airflow. Okay, what do? When you attach a leather hard piece of clay to a leather hard piece of clay, you slip and score. So I'm going to slip and score this on both sides because this was also leather hard. I want both parts to be leather hard. When you attach 2 leather hard pieces of clay, you want a wet coil or a wet bit of clay in between. So that's going to be really important. I always put my coil on the piece that I'm attaching because that's the form that I'm attaching. I may have messed something up here, so I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to score this wet coil. My goal or my intention is to almost make this coil feel like it is now a part of this body. So again, I'm tearing it up. It's not very pretty at all. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little bit of slip in here. Again, not a lot. I do not drown my seam in slip. That's gross. And now I'll go ahead and attach it. Before you start putting your attachments on, you should already have a plan of everything that you're going to need for the work, because you want to make those attachments ahead of time. Most of them anyway, you're going to want to make ahead of time because you do want to put things on while they're leather hard. So I'm taking my wooden modeling tool and I'm starting to press around that seam. I really want to make sure that that seam is nice and tight. And then at this point, I can come in with my serrated rib and I can make it look a lot nicer when I go to blend it all together. You're going to see as I walk through all of this that I don't usually remove these teeth marks until I'm more toward the end, because I'm going to pretty much be doing that with everything that I do. Okay. And at this point, if you want to shape it a little bit more with your hand, you can try. You can use the paddle to start beating things. But now you see that I have a little pot belly there. One of the things you want to always consider is negative space and how your work hits the table. Even if you want your work to set flat on the table, you still want to have a little rounded edge there so that it makes it look a little bit visually lighter. Now that's going to be a little different if you're doing something like if you want a tree to look like it's going into the ground, that's going to be different. But if it's an object that's setting on something, you do want to give it a little roundness under there. When you're making your project here, I definitely consider, depending on what you're doing, to raise it. If you are making an animal and you're wanting it to walk, you're going to go ahead and actually raise that animal. This is really one of the first things you want to do, is to make a riser so that when you go to put the legs on, the legs don't crumble from the weight of this. So I've already made a riser here. This is just a solid piece of clay for now that I've come in, and I want it to be as big as I can possibly get it, but smaller than where I'm going to be putting my legs. So if I'm putting my legs here and here, I need this to be smaller than that. But for now, I know that I want my guy or gal to kind of set at an angle, because I'm going to have a tail that's going to kind of hold it down here, and its head's going to look up a little bit. So I'm going to just kind of decide where I want my body gesture to be. And I'm going to make this. I make this ahead of time because it needs to firm up before I actually ever put the legs on. The legs are going to be fragile and they are not going to want to hold the weight of all this. So that's what we're making this for. Now, something about these, they're going to go through the kiln with you, with this. It's not going to be attached, it's going to come off later, but it is going to go through the kiln, because as something fires, it's going to warp and it's going to move around a little bit. So we want to have this structure there through at least that bisque kiln. If we can pull it through the glaze kiln, that's also a total plus if we can do that. That's not always possible because of glazing. So That's that. Now you can see that I have hollowed this out. Once I have the shape I want, I have hollowed it out. I did wait till it was leather hard to hollow it out, but I definitely do not want to put a huge brick of clay in the kiln because again, it's going to blow up if we do that, if it didn't dry out completely. So make this one of the first things that you do. If you have anything that you're dealing with on the bottom, for instance, like maybe you wanted the little maybe you are making a pig and you wanted to give a little pot belly on the bottom, make sure you put that on first before you make this because this will have to accommodate that right there. So really important, get this made though as soon as you possibly can for this and start letting it firm up. Right now, I don't necessarily need it, but I wanted you to know you got to think ahead for what you're doing. Something else to mention about your piece that goes below your work, you don't want it to be clay on clay because it could end up sticking. So you do want to put a piece of paper or a little piece of newspaper between the two parts so that they don't stick together. So just know, because I'm trying to do a few things, I'm probably going to take the paper out, but I just want you to know that you never, if you don't want it to stick, then go ahead and put some kind of paper between the two parts so that it doesn't stick. As far as legs go, I'm going to put my legs on last because I don't want to have to deal with this and I don't want to have to deal with fragile legs while I'm doing all of these other things. So my legs are something that I'm pretty much going to put on at the end. But you know I already have my legs made, right? Because they're firming up, I want them firm. So one of the first things I'm going to do is put my head on because that's kind of nice and easy. My head right here, as you can imagine, are just two pinched pots that have been put together to make a sphere, just like this body. So nice and easy, you already know how to do that. You can see that I have pressed in where my eye sockets are going to go. I've beat it into the shape that I want to kind of go with my body here. Now, you can just go ahead and plop your head on. If that's what you want, and that's what you're looking for, you can go ahead and plop it on. There's a way to go about that I'm going to talk about, but if you do feel like, I don't like that there's no delineation in there, you can build a neck. To find out. So you can build a neck if you would prefer that your work looks something more like that. I'm going to get into the neck in a minute, but first I want to talk about if you do just want to put a head on. Now this is a solid form, so as we did with our body, we always want to poke a hole in. Now I'm going to actually cut a hole in, but I want to make sure that I do it in the right area. So I kind of do need to know what my gesture is because that might determine where I put my hole here. Okay, so if I'm like, yeah, that looks pretty good there, I can go ahead and mark my clay so I know where I'm going to actually open my clay up. Now I am going to put a neck on this, but I pretty much already know that where my neck is going to go, so I'm going to go ahead and just do what I need to do here. Again, you always want to come in that 1/4 of an inch, but you still want to take as much clay out as you can. So I don't want to just poke a hole. I do want to come in and I do want to take out clay, so that I have something like that. And then, because I'm doing leather hard and leather hard, I'm going to go ahead, slip and score, and put a wet coil in between. wet coil in between. Really would rather work with a neck because I think that it looks cuter with the neck. So the neck, you can go ahead and just with a solid piece of clay, form the neck into whatever shape that you want the neck to be, knowing that you will have to hollow that out. Again, I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So you can go ahead and form your neck with a solid piece of clay, hollow it out. I just made this with coils because I know how to coil. If you know how to coil, go for it. So I have my neck and I'm going to place it where I feel like it needs to go, and I can kind of form that to my body here. Now you can see right now how important it is to know what's happening down here as far as your body gesture and all of that. So I can come in here then, and I'm going to slip and score both areas. And then what am I going to do? 2 leather hard pieces of clay, get a wet coil, and slip. Slipping and scoring all my parts. I think I'm going to put my neck on first here. My coil doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to be there. And I'm really pressing it in, and I'm gonna, again, really, I want my coil to be a part of this clay body here. So again, I've got my hole, I've slipped and scored. I'm going to put my coil on. I'm going to go ahead and slip again. And I'm going to go ahead then and attach. It is important that your hole is very open, and that when you are applying this, that you are actually going to hold so that nothing is collapsing. I'm almost pushing up with my body because I don't really want to push all this weight on this right now, because I don't want my bottom to actually collapse out. And I can go ahead and get rid of this for now so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to jiggle that head on. Now, this seam is very weak right now. We have quite a bit of weight on something that isn't very big. So this is a scary seam, and if you mishandle it, your head could fall off. So be really careful about this. You want to start letting things firm up before you mess with them too much. So I'm definitely not going to start flying this around because my head's just going to fall right off. So even if it does feel a little scary right now, once it does firm up, it will feel better. Now, you probably know what I'm going to say about this seam, don't ya? Leave it. Leave that seam there right now. You are eventually going to take the small wooden tool and press that seam in. You don't want to do that just yet because you want the seam to firm up so that when you do press it in, it's already leather hard, or at least kind of the same state as you've got here. And if there are any air pockets, you're going to press that harder clay into that seam and make it a lot stronger. So again, we're dealing with this idea of compression. I'm going to go ahead and push the seam in right now because I want you to see what that looks like, but you would wait. So I'm taking that convex part of the tool and I'm going to press it in. If you don't have this tool, you can use another tool that is similar to this. You can use your fingers. If you have the wooden modeling tool, it's a little bit big for this application, but you can try to get in there and press everything in with that. And then as usual, you're going to come in here and smooth everything together. So now I have a head on a body and it's at this kind of weird angle. So you see how things are wobbling around a little bit? I want to get my tail on here because I want to get that stability going. I'm doing this pretty drastic for the sake of demo. You're probably not going to have anything that's doing this weird stuff. But I'm going to go ahead, and the tail is actually part of my body. And so again, before I start doing details like eyes and nose and arms and legs, I kind of want to get my body done first. And when I say body, this could be anything, right? I'm talking in terms of animal parts or people parts. But if you're making an instrument or making any kind of sculpture, know that I'm talking about body in that sense. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to building solid to get a tail on here. I'm going to show you how to do that. What I'm about to show you is this idea of building solid and then hollowing out. You could have done what I'm about to do here with the head. That would have been fine. You could have even done it with the belly. Where this comes in really nice handy is, let's say you are building a dog that is sitting on its hind legs, and you know how the legs kind of have the hunch here? Well, that's kind of hard to do with like a pinch pot. So building anything, any addition that you want to put on here solid and then carving it out is a really quick and accurate way of doing things because you really get exactly what you want it to look like. So if you decide that is an approach that you would like to take, you are going to take a piece of plastic. Got my plastic. Here it is. Found it. Take a piece of plastic and you're going to put it on your clay body so that when you go to build this on, it is not actually sticking to your clay. Okay, so I'm going to get an initial shape started. This is going to look kind of like a dinosaur tail. So I'm going to get an initial shape going, and then I'm going to start pressing this on. Notice that I am on my riser here because the tail is actually going to be something that's going to help stabilize the work. I don't have my legs on right now, but the tail is going to help stabilize the work. Now at this point, I can't really get underneath. So I can pull this. Now this is something that should have happened before the head went on, which I actually in my notes have it going on before the head went on, but you know, this is what happens. Now this is super lumpy and weird. That's okay. You know how you're going to get rid of that. Right now it's just kind of getting that shape up against this, okay? While it's still wet, you can come in You're not going to mess with this area here, but you can come in and you can just start to get some of your lumps out so that you can start forming it how you want to form it. So you get that going and you let that firm up. So again, this is right after I put the belly on and made the riser, this is what should have happened. So I'm a little bit out of order right now. So you can see what that's starting to look like. I made one earlier so that we can keep on moving along here. You can see when you take the plastic out that you've got some weird stuff here. If it's getting too thin, you might want to pull it off. Some of that is just going to be pulled into the clay body. But you can see here that that is all solid, and we don't want solid, right? We need to make sure that we go in and we carve that out. So here's the one that I made already. It's a little bit better shape. And I'm going to take the ribbon tool and I am going to start carving this out. Now, 1/4 of an inch, right? We want it 1/4 of an inch. So yes, you are going to carve as much as you can possibly get until you get to 1/4 of an inch. Remember, you can use the needle tool if you are having trouble sensing how thick your walls are. They don't have to be exactly 1/4 of an inch, right? They just need to be thin, not solid anymore. If you have, let's say, a tail that is coming way up here and it's really thick for a long time, you're actually going to make it and then chop it into sections so that you can thin it out and then put it back together again. Now, when you're carving out, this happens a lot. Oh man, I just carved through my surface, shoot. Well, you know how to fix it. If you don't remember how to fix it, you're going to go back into the pinch presentation and you're going to look at how to fix holes and cracks, okay? Remember, I made a plug, and now I like to fix it before I attach so that I can get on the inside and really make sure that things are looking good. All right, I could go a little bit further, but I want to get this on to show you. So you're hollowing that out. I'm going to put that on where it's looking good. Take the needle tool, go around. My head is going to fall off. It keeps, it should not be on right now doing all this other stuff. I'm going to go ahead and rip it off because it's making me crazy. If this happens to you, it is not a big deal. You're just going to put the head off to the side and you're just going to attach it later. It's like ready to go. So don't worry if you did things out of order. Everything is so fixable right now, which is one of the really huge beauties of clay. So now that I know what to cut, remember I'm coming in 1/4 of an inch from that, and I can go ahead and I can cut as much clay as I possibly can off. This is allowing air to flow and it's getting rid of all that clay that I just did not need. Now to slip and score, this is actually going over this. So I don't really want to slip and score here unless I was putting something on like that, right? So wherever you need that it to be glued on is where you're going to actually slip and score. And again, I'm coming a little bit further out because I know I have all of these kind of weird edge that I'm going to try to blend if I can. I'm going to slip and score on the inside of here, right? Because that's the important part. Now, I have 2 leather hard pieces of clay. What do I do next? 2 leather hard pieces of clay. What do I do? course, I put a wet coil in between. Or wet clay. If you're not sure how to do the coil yet, not a big deal. You can just take clay and smash it in there. We've kind of talked a little bit about this already, but anytime you're putting clay down, just try to do a rounded edge or a rounded end. So round to flat or round to round is the way you want to do. You don't really want to put flat on flat. Now I do want to make sure this goes on at the right angle, so I'm going to go ahead and get my little riser out. Go ahead and press that on. Take the wooden modeling tool, press in at that seam, serrated rib, and start to blend that body together. How about that? Now, if you have any weird areas, at this point you can always add clay. Sometimes where the two parts come together, let's just say there's a dent there, all you got to do is take that little coil of clay and press it in to smooth those areas. At this point, I would have to say that my body is ready. So I'm ready for the details or the appendages like the arms, legs, eyeballs, any kind of detail that this may have. At this point, it is a good idea for you to have a board that you're working on and a sheet or a few sheets of newspaper on top of the board. You never want to work directly on the board because this is always shrinking and you want it not to stick to the board and then crack. So this is kind of the setup you want. I've also put this on a turntable because I have one. If you're in a studio situation, you may also have one, and they're pretty handy while you're working so that you can kind of do one of these jobs. Okay. So again, at this point, now you want to start working on a board. Up until this point, it wasn't really necessary, but once we start putting legs on especially, we're not really going to want to move this around. We're going to actually want to move it with the board. Also, when we go to wrap it up, we're going to want it to be on a board as well. As far as your board goes, a gigantic board is not helpful. So don't go get a huge board, but something that's really small is not helpful either because you don't want anything hanging off of it. And if you did have to prop anything, like let's say you're going to have an arm that's swinging way out here and you need to prop it so that it doesn't collapse, you want to make sure your board is big enough to handle that prop. And I will talk about all of those things here as well. So let's go ahead and start putting some of the appendages on. Notice that that spot is flat. If you want this to look more like a ball with that actually has some negative space behind it, then you're going to have to make something that looks like this. So this is the shape that you're going for, and you can see I'm going to go ahead and make my eyeballs here. It is not okay to just make a ball and slip and score it on, because as you notice, there's no surface area here, and that's going to get you in trouble later. So you don't want to do that. This is just going to fly, it's going to fly off in the kiln. It's not going to stick. So that's why we put these points on. These points are actually going to sink into the clay, and it'll give it all that surface area Do you see how now I have more of an eye that has negative space behind it? That's how you do that. Now, of course, with everything, we need to score. You might need your needle tool to get in here with this one. Okay. I have a wet brush right here that I'm coming in, and I'm just kind of getting rid of some of that stuff, that's the slip that pushed out of that eyeball. When we go to clean up, when you watch the cleanup video, it'll show you how to properly clean these areas up. I don't have to go through this right now. I could have just waited and dealt with it later. Okay, so now I have two eyes that are pretty bulgy. All right, let's talk about things like long linear elements that you want to stick off. Maybe this is a mouse tail. Maybe this is a trunk. I am here to tell you that anything that is long like this cannot happen, at least in this class. It is going, once it becomes bone dry, it becomes so fragile that it is just going to break off. So we don't do anything quite like this. So if you've got something that maybe you want to make a trunk, or maybe you want to make a mouse tail or something thin like this, what you're going to need to do is figure out a way to push it back into a place on the body and let it stick there. So this is okay. If you've got something that's just that big sticking out, that's really okay. It's the long linear element that can't work. So even something hanging down like this is just really, really dangerous. So we don't do that in this class. What I have done is I've made something here that I'm going to go ahead and stick on. This is firmed up a little bit because if I wait, or if I put it on right away, it may slump and fall. When you are making linear elements like that, you can use your table to roll a coil. What's important is that at the end, I've got a taper here, so that just means I rolled with my hand at an angle. But anytime you're doing something like this, you want to go ahead and bang the end at the table so that you have surface area at the end. You're gonna see this again when we talk about the arms and the legs, but this is really important. And this little bump that you see here is really important. Because that little bump, you're going to be able to actually pull into the body without it collapsing. So let me show you what happens if you've got something that just looks like this, and you're going to go ahead and put it on here. When you put it on and you dig to press in to attach it to the body, do you see what you just did? I don't know if you can see that or not. Do you see how it goes in and it makes it your piece go down? It makes it divot in before it hits the body. You don't want that. That's ugly. You don't want that. When you have the bump here, you're actually then going to just pull at that bump, and you're not going to get that divot anymore. So that's really important. All right, so I've made my little nose. This creature is just a creature. We don't know what it is. I've made my nose, and I'm going to, at this point, put just a little ball of clay right there, and just smash that ball of clay in. And because I'm kind of picking up some slip, I don't really need to re-slip it. So that's looking pretty good here. And I can go always with a counter pressure. So I'm holding my head while I put this on. And I'm smearing it in. And then with this little area, I am going to go ahead and just attach it to the face. I'm going to do that by just using my needle tool. I kind of know I'm going to mark it, and I'm going to come in here and just put very few little scratches in there. I might need a smaller brush. I'm going to figure out where that's going. Things like this may not be totally necessary to put a wet coil or a wet clay down. You can get away with some things. I have a friend who gets away with a lot. He doesn't do a lot of this stuff, but he also has never worked with porcelain. So I think when you know that your different clay bodies act a different way, it's just good to get into these habits now, so that if you did want to work with something like porcelain, it's going to be a lot easier for you to do that. So anything that's weird in here, we can get in there and clean up later. Any of this that's around here, that's going to be your small wire tool is going to be a good way to get in there, because your fingers might not fit, and that's going to blend in. And then more on how to clean these parts up later. Okay, not too bad. There you go. All right, let's talk about arms. When you make your arm or an appendage, again, I'm talking in terms of anatomy, but you do not have to be doing this. You can do them solid, you can coil them, however you need to make it happen. Make it happen. Just wherever you are going to connect, make that, bang it against the board or your table. But what's important is that when you make your arm, you actually put it in the shape that you want it before you go to attach, because an appendage that's hanging off in any way is going to just slump. It's not going to hold up very well. So if I want to make my arm here, doesn't that look great? It's already ready to go. But before I do that, I want to show you something about making clothes. So let's say I want to give this guy some clothes. I am not going to take a sheet of clay and give it a shirt. I am never taking a sheet of clay and putting it on anything, ever. I am always going to faux it. So this is absolutely not what you want to do. You are not taking a sheet of clay. But you can take a coil of clay. So what I'm going to do is, this person's going to have long sleeves. And I am going to go ahead and give it a little score. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a little slip. Knowing that I'm going to be pulling this way, I can actually score this way. Put a little slip on there. If this was wet, I would not need to slip and score right now. So if you know you're going to be making clothes, and you can go ahead and do it while things are still wet. So I put that coil on. Now it looks like a bracelet. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the coil just on the one side. That would be the clothing side. I'm pulling that back. And what it does is it makes it look like I've got something coming out of something else. See? Now it looks like it has a sleeve on. Funny. All right, now once you do want to get those details going before you attach. It's easier to work with stuff before it's actually attached. So get your hands the way you want them, put clothes on. You don't have, if you want a texture, you can. I'd get that going first. And then when you're ready to actually put the hand on, it's nice and firm and the details are already in there. And you're going to use your body to contour to see what angle you need to cut. So maybe I want him to have an arm that's kind of at this angle. So I am looking down my body like this, and I'm able to see exactly what angle I need to cut this in order to get it going in that direction. Okay. All right, and then I can go ahead, because this is a small area, I'm going to use my needle tool to score. This does not need to be hollow, because if you go 1/4 of an inch this way, this way, or this way, or this way, you're going to get to the center. So this is not thick enough that you have to worry. Now, there's nothing right about this. I'm probably going to pull this arm off. I just wanted to show you what that looks like, because this little guy is going to have 4 legs, so it would be weird if he had an arm as well. Okay, but that's your arm for you. Let's talk about legs. I had already mentioned that you want to pre-make your legs so that they firm up, and also now that you know a little bit more about how to make something look like it's got a sock on or a shoe on, this is what that looks like. I want my legs to be completely ready to some extent so that when I put them on, I don't have to do all these details while they're on this body. It's so much easier to sit there and work with them like this than when they're actually on the body. So you can see I've got a cute little leg here that's wearing a sock. This was just a coil that was blended down, and then this, that where it shows that the shoe is, this was also just a coil that was blended down. I started with something similar to that. So you can kind of see how just a few coils can really start putting some fun, cute little things, okay? And then you want to wait till these are leather hard before you go to put the legs on. I didn't do that for the sake of demo to all of these, but I do have my legs. I do like to make them a little bit longer than I feel like I need them so that I can cut them down. These again were just made by rolling a coil and then bending them at the bottom. You're all going to have a different idea of what you need to do here. This is a good example of how to kind of judge what angle to cut your leg at. I made it a little bit longer, as I said, and if I want my leg to go, let's see, right there, let's say, maybe I want it to go right there, I can use the body here to get the angle that I need, and I'm going to go ahead and just cut at that angle. So now that leg is cut at the angle that I need it. Feels like it needs to. And at this point, I can go ahead and slip and score my legs on. Little ball of clay, a little bit of slip, and press. Little D would like to say hello, and now you're ready to go ahead and stick that on. My sweet, sweet, sweets. Here's a little D. She would like to say hello. So if you hear any meowing, it's her. Hello, Dee. Who's goods? Yeah, you're goods. All right. She doesn't like to be held. Okay. So I have put all 4 legs on. Don't they look great? What you do want to do at this point is, if you're able to pull your piece out, you're not always able to do that. You do want to make sure that it's standing on all of its legs, or everything it needs to be standing on, or else it's going to be rocky when it comes out of the kiln. When you do this, make sure you're supporting. Right now, my legs go straight down, so they're not that scary to begin with. But if yours is in like motion and it's walking, or you've got something else going on, you do not want to put the weight of this on those legs. So just be really careful about how you handle this. And now that you've got the legs on, just be careful about how you move it around. You kind of want to keep it in place at this point. But I did want you to notice how nice that negative space is down there. By lifting this up, it does make that really nice down there. I'm going to go ahead and keep that in there. And I wanted to talk to you about reinforcing coils just in case you need them. A reinforcing coil is just a coil, a small little snake, that you put around a seam. So maybe you don't love the way that looks. You can go ahead and make a reinforcing coil. You can put it around that seam, and you can blend it in. So I'm using that little wire tool handle, and you can start blending it. And now maybe it doesn't look so abrupt. That seam doesn't look so abrupt. So that'll be a reinforcing coil. You may need those around your neck or around anything that you had attached. You may need a reinforcing coil to fill in space or to smooth it out and make it look nice. So now let's talk about just little details. I'm going to go ahead and put little spikes down his back, but if you've got like a fish, or it could just be anything, any detail that you're going to make, go ahead and form it. Anything that I know I'm going to attach, I do try to get that bulge at the bottom so that if I am putting it on a flat area, I can just pull the bulge and not make it weird at the end. If I know I'm going on a ridge or something like that, I can go ahead and I can take a needle tool or something and just kind of split that open so that there's more surface area going on that edge. So again, we, as usual, slip and score. Put wet clay. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do that. And now I know that it's on there. And these, of course, can just be blended in. If it gets to be too much, you just pull that clay off. Now you have a cute little ridge here. And you can keep going with that. Little details like if something is attached to the body or is part of the body, or if something is stuck onto the body, or if something is coming out of the body, those little details are always really important. It always makes me crazy to see like an ear with an earring, and the earring is just like a hoop earring, and the earring's just smashed into the ear. It should look like it's going through the skin, right? So I'm going to show you just a few quick little tricks about that. I am not slipping and scoring, I'm just talking right now, so know that all this would be slipped and scored on. So if I wanted something to look like it was attached to the body, of course I would go in and just blend right into the body. That's kind of a no-brainer. So that looks like it's blended into the body and that this just comes out of the body. We've already talked a little bit about if we want something to look like it's coming out of, like the arm and a sleeve. But if we want this to look like it's coming out of the body, we're going to take a coil and we will pull the coil down in the direction of the body. See, now it looks like it's coming out of the body. If we want it to look like it's stuck onto the body, then we're going to pull the coil up. And now it looks stuck on. And then if we want it to look like something is going through the body. We can kind of do something like that. It's similar to this first one, but just not quite as aggressive. Okay, so we have attached, coming out of, being stuck on, and going into. As far as cleanup, I'm not going to go through the full cleanup because you already have that on a presentation. But at this point, when everything is pretty much done, now you're going to go ahead and you're going to go in and you're going to go through those cleanup steps. I'm not going to go through those again. I just want you to know at this point you're going to go through those cleanup steps. And then some things that the cleanup didn't talk about are areas that are hard to get to. Now you have details on here, and that is where this tool is going to come in handy. This tool, maybe your needle tool, and any other wire tools that you may have. These are the tools that are able to get in and actually clean up. So if you've got any weird chunks of clay anywhere, you can come in here and you can pull them out. These tools are also great tools to start putting detail in if you're wanting to put detail in the work. What's important about these tools is you don't use them until everything's leather hard, which by the time you're at this state, everything's going to be leather hard anyway. But this carving, making texture, and cleaning up is always best at leather hard. The clay is just too mushy if you go before leather hard. And then final cleanup, things like, you can see I believe this was the wooden tool, the back of this wooden handle. You can come in here with a wet paintbrush and you can actually start cleaning up any of those little things. Now the wet brush starts pulling off slip, so when that happens you have to clean off the slip I'm actually just using a container that's full of water. You get the slip off and you start again. You also want a rag at this point because you don't want to put a bunch of water on, so you just kind of get your brush a little bit wet and then come in here and you can start cleaning things up. Once it gets slippy, do the whole process over again. Your fingers are also great rubber ribs, so if you can get your finger in anywhere, that makes a good rubber rib. Side note, when you're hollowing something out, you do want to go in with either your scoring tool or your needle tool, and you want to put little holes in the walls. This is to ensure that there's no air in those walls. If you can't get in, that's when you're going to go ahead and use that needle tool. It's a little bit longer. But, especially if when you were building solid, you kept adding clay and adding clay. This will help just to make sure part of your wall doesn't blow off. Another little side note, 2 legs are not going to work. This is a super bad example, but 2 legs are not going to work. Your work is just going to fall over. A tripod will work. So tripod will work, 4 legs will work, 2 legs will not work. Now, if you end up doing legs or something that has a really big bottom on it, and you're really putting the surface area down, that will work. So if you can get away with only 2 points of contact on the table, but only if they are wide enough and that there's enough surface area to actually hold everything in balance. Really important. So yes, the detail can be seen in things like this. But it doesn't stop at close. I just want to make sure you understand that. If you're making a turtle, there is a delineation between the turtle shell and the turtle body. Again, you would never want to put a sheet of clay on top to make that turtle shell. You would want to put a coil and do what we've done here. So just know, I just want to reiterate that, no sheets of clay, never, never, never. You're going to just make it look like there is a shell on top of a body, or whatever you are needing to do. I think that's it. This one was super long, but it's really, really important. You are going to have different things, but this should have covered everything that you do have. And obviously, you're just going to email me if you've got a special problem that I didn't go over. But this should have pretty much taken care of most of it. Now that you've got your beautiful sculpture done, you're going to want to look at the wrap video so that it doesn't dry too fast. You do not, once you're finished, you don't want to just let it hang out. So make sure you look at that wrap it up video, and this guy's going to get fired, and you'll be good to go. So, happy attaching. You can get started now.